so welcome to the video. This video essentially takes you through the full process from start to finish of how to make a welted pocket. I was going to make this a paid thing on my website, but I decided against it. If you've been around here for a while on Roughcut, you know I'm doing patterns. So I was going to make this an add-on to the patterns, but welted pockets are so accessible, you can find the other tutorials on YouTube. I'm hoping this one finds you well. I make patterns, they're for really cool items. If you want to check them out, check them out. Let's get started. So hello, thank you for purchasing the welted pocket. In this video, I'm going to take you through the whole process of how to make one of these, which is pretty much a pocket that I use in almost every single piece of clothing that I make on Roughcut. I normally just remix it in different ways, whether that's adding a zip, adding a button, whether that's doing a single welt pocket or a double welt. There are so many different ways that you can integrate this into your piece of clothing. I think it is so simple. I'm going to break down everything methodically. I'm going to show you how much excess fabric you need. You can do this with small pieces of fabric that you have left over and do a smaller welted pocket, or you can do this with some big scraps you have left of the fabric. And these sort of pockets are functional on a bomber jacket, a Harrington jacket, any kind of jacket you're making as the slanted pockets that you'd sort of put your hands naturally in. Let's just jump straight into it. It's a very easy, simple process. If you've got a domestic machine, you can do this. And if you've got an industrial machine, you can also obviously do this. So what I'm going to show you here is how to do a very simple straight stitch version. What you can do, I'm going to show you where you can obviously add this in, but you can obviously use a zigzag stitch for this side piece to keep it more structured, more durable, and also on the inside I've straight stitched all of this. You can overlock that because it will make it a lot cleaner, but in this video I'm literally just showing you the base of how to do this with a straight stitch. It is so simple. So before I go any further on this tutorial, I just wanted to show you this tool right here. This basically helps me align my welted pockets on the front bodice pieces. Just like this, you put your hands in, it makes them both sides symmetrical. All I've done here is lined up a welted pocket. I'd line this up with the corner of the front piece on the bottom right, and I'd just do a little chalk line there to mark out where my welted pocket was going to be. I just flip this over, mark this out too, and then you know that both your welted pockets are going to be the exact same place on both front panels. So I'm just going to cut out a small square which my pocket is basically going to be in the middle of. In your case, this is going to be on your actual piece of clothing. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark out how big I want this welted pocket to be. So in my case, I want it to be around 15 centimeters long. Once you've got that marking of how big you want this pocket to be, you just want to do these two small lines at the end. So the next thing we're going to cut out is the inside flaps. These are going to manipulate and fold. So these are going to be your double welted flaps for the pocket. Essentially, I know that my pocket's going to be 15 centimeters long. So I'm going to want to cut these flaps 20 centimeters because when they fold and you manipulate them into the inside of the pocket, you're going to need to close that pocket up on the inside. You're going to need to cut two of these, one for the bottom, one for the top, and you're going to need a little bit of width because you're folding and manipulating this in so it connects to the inner lining of that pocket. You can play around with this once you know how to do a welted pocket, but for tutorial's sake, I'm going to cut two strips of 10 centimeters by 20 centimeters. So the reason we're cutting these two inside flaps a little bit longer than our original line for the welted pocket is because when we go to turn everything inside out and then everything's in sort of place where we want it to be, you're going to have to stitch all the way down this line to close up what this inside pocket is going to be on each side. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cut out these two flaps. I'm using my electric cutters in this video, but you can use your normal scissors. So you should have two flaps that look like this. And you basically want to do this front facing. So if you have a pattern or some sort of image on the front of your fabric, you basically want to fold it and place it so it's facing inside, front facings to the normal fabric. And you want to do the exact same thing with the other one. As you can see, these are a little bit longer than your original line that you have marked out, which is absolutely perfect. This is what we want. So pins are your best friend here. You're just going to pin these into place. So now we've pinned these two front facing flaps down to the main fabric of your garment. You want to run a stitch all the way down and you want to run the stitch all the way down there. So these are two parallel stitches that are going to be running next to each other. This is going to be the start of your pocket. So this stitch is going to start right on the end of your line indications. You basically want to start your stitch just on the end of where you've marked out your original line on your original fabric. Depending on how wide you want your final welted pocket to be, and how wide you want them flaps to be on your final garment, you could essentially go further and stitch a little bit further away, or you could stitch right close to the edge. For argument's sake, I'm just going to leave 1/4 of an inch, and I'm basically going to stitch. And whilst I'm stitching, just to start this off, I'm going to do a back and forth stitch on my machine just to secure the stitching. Once you get to the end, make sure that you're not going over that indication that you've marked for your original first line. When you get to it, back and forth stitch. Snip all the excess threads. So now we're just going to stitch down the other side. Again, these stitches have got to be parallel, so if you start doing a wonky stitch, this will make a big difference on your final product. Then snip the excess threads. And what we want to do now is just unpin all of them pins that we've put in. You can do all of that process without pins. The reason I did it with pins is just to show you that your first welted pocket is not scary at all. You don't need to hold fabric in place. Pins are your best friend. So now we've got these two stitching marks in here. And if you slightly, pull away these two excess bits of fabric and fold them out, you'll start to see that there is a gap that's being created in between your stitches, which should run perfectly your original first line. You're essentially cutting down this original line, but you're waiting until you get around 2 centimeters from the edge, and then you're cutting up directly towards that end point of your stitch mark. So again, you're starting your cutting line in the middle of this original line, and you're cutting all the way, not right until the edge, but you're just cutting around 2 centimeters from the edge, and then you're cutting a diagonal line up left to the end of your stitch mark, and then up right to the end of your right stitch mark. This is going to create a small triangle at the end, which is going to basically allow you to fold it and tuck it under so it cleans up your welted pocket. So you should have something that looks a little bit like that. So now you've got this scary looking thing here that feels like it could go wrong at any second, and you're in a perfect place. You basically want to fold over your jacket, flip over your jacket, so you're basically working on the inside now, and you've got these 2 triangles right here. This is the side of your welted pocket, and you basically want to fold these over. You can use an iron right now to press these triangles down. And when we fold this the right way around again, you'll see that this is starting to clean up that edge of your welted pocket right there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do this one at a time. We're just going to fold these 2 side bits in and slowly fold this so it goes into the inside of the pocket. And now we're just going to do that with the other side too. So you've just ironed down that triangle. And basically what you're doing now is you're just flattening with your fingers that edge. And then you're basically just folding that inside welt down so it hits the middle point of that triangle. And you're doing the exact same for the other side, just lining up that middle point. You can flip it back round and you can throw a pin just in this side piece here. Again, fold it in on the edge side so it's in the middle of that triangle. And again on the other side. You can start to see that your welted pocket is starting to take place. So what you can do now is turn it back the normal way up, and you can just press this middle seam and it will start to make a nice welted pocket. This is what it's going to look like on the inside of your fabric, and this is what it's going to look like on the outside. You want to run a stitch very close to that edge all the way around. When you get to the 2 sides, you can take the pins out. So now you should have something that looks a little bit like this. What you can do is you can do a zigzag stitch on about 0 stitch length, and you can run that across just for a bit of reinforcement on that side, and you can do the same thing. And you can do the same thing for the other side here. But I'm not going to do that for tutorial purposes. I'm essentially just going to show you how to attach the lining now, and then that'll be a finished welted pocket. In my case, it doesn't matter at all because I'm just doing this as a tutorial, but I'm gonna decide this is my bottom and then this is my top. What you're gonna do is you're gonna unfold this, and you can see that there's a lot of excess fabric here. We're just gonna flip this over, and you're gonna see this is the inside of your pocket, all nice and clean. And we're just gonna put that to the side for now, but you're basically stitching on this, so keep it just like that for a second. So now we're going to cut the lining of the pocket. We measured this out to be 20 centimeters. So I'm going to grab some of that scraps again. We're going to measure a 20 centimeter piece of lining. We're just going to mark that out to be 20 centimeters long. And you want this lining to be relatively long. It kind of depends what sort of welted pocket you want. If you want a shallower pocket, kind of want to cut this still kind of long because it's going to fold over twice. So you've got to kind of imagine this lining to be folded over, and half of this size is what the depth of your pocket is going to be. So in my case, I kind of want this to be a relatively deep pocket. I'm going to mark this off from eye just around there. I'm going to cut this out, then I'm going to throw my excess to the side again. So this is your lining for your pocket, and this is the inside of your pocket. So what you want to do is you want to match these up now. So again, as I mentioned earlier, if your fabric has got texture or print on it, then you're going to want to make sure that the texture or print side is facing up, and this is obviously going to have texture or print on because it's been folded over. And you basically want to grab the front facing, so the print is facing each other, and you just want to lay it down on the bottom part of your welt, just like that. You can run a stitch straight through this, and it should naturally unfold, and we're going to start to create the lining of your welt. What you can do is you can turn this over, and if you stitch from the other side, it might be a little bit easier. You can line it up with a seam. You just stitch down this line. Once you've stitched down that line, you can just turn it the other way and then flip the whole pocket out. And you can start to see that this is creating the lining. Basically just want to fold that down. You're going to cut off this excess in a minute, flip it round, and then you can run a top stitch all the way down there. You can actually flip this over, just this lining panel, and then you can cut this excess off. Now what you want to do is flip the bottom of the lining all the way up to match the top, just there. And this is what's going to enclosure your whole lining. Hold these two top pieces, and we're just going to flip this over. And this is what you're stitching across now. So this is the top of your welt, and we're just closing this lining up. Just before we get to the end, you can kind of unfold this whole pocket, and it will reveal your triangle from the beginning. What you want to do is you want to stitch right up so your needle goes in line with that beginning of the triangle where that fold is right there. And then we're just going to change directions, and we're going to stitch. Make sure you don't stitch over this fold. All of this extra fabric right here is the outside of your jacket, so you do not want to stitch over any of this right here. You just want to follow this stitch all the way down over that triangle down to the very bottom of the welted pocket lining. And just like that, we can fold that back down and then do the exact same with the other side. We're just folding that up, and it reveals the triangle. And this is where it gets a bit tricky. If you're confident enough to stitch with the fabric being on the inside of your machine, do so. If not, you can start the stitch from the other side of the fabric. But in my case, I'm just going to stitch from the top of the fabric. Again, make sure you're stitching over this triangle. So we can unfold this mess that we've just made, and you can see that it is a fully functional welted pocket with lining. This is the lining on the inside. This is your welted pocket. To clean this up, you can just cut off the excess on the right of this stitch we've just made. The same with the top. Cut off all of this excess on the right of the stitch that you made, and then the same with the other side. And then we have a finished welt pocket. And thank you for watching the video. I really hope this has brought some value. You can do this in however many ways you want. There is a million ways you can take the welted pocket. This is just the very base straight stitch version of doing it, and now you can go off on your own journey. You can figure out how to add a zip, you can figure out how to do a curved welted pocket, you can figure out how to do a single flat welted pocket. There is a million different options. This is the base level tutorial of how to get into welted pockets, which hopefully gets you into more pockets. If you're interested in more pockets, they're all up on my website. I hope you've got some value from this. I'll see you in a little bit. And before I go, just like I said in the very beginning of the video, I do all of my different patterns that you can look at, decide which one sort of speaks to you and give it a go. All of these patterns come with free tutorials, and they're all graded from sizes small to large, 30 waist all the way up to 40 waist. So yeah, check them out.